as guilty of that as anybody else. You know, we
Well,
we
first of all,
hear stories about the CIA all the time.
I have to tell you, I hardly think there's a moral comparison between either Hitler or the communist movement and American businesses. I mean, it's not that some of them didn't support both Hitler and Stalin, and going all the way back to Lenin. And some of them even apologized for the Soviet Union after the war. I mean, we know the left did right up to the day of Gorbachev. These are the most bloodthirsty regimes, twice as bloodthirsty as Hitler's. And yet there was all this kind of like, oh, they're doing it for the people. But the point is that that's really a false comparison. And Hitler and the Nazi movement, I'm going to be blunt here.
They evil.
It was evil for sure.
Yes.
But they were very steeped in this New Age occultic philosophy that Blavatsky represented. They found Blavatsky's book on Hitler's bedstand. I mean, this was. They were into this whole thing of, this secular world order movement. I mean, this was, in a way, even more so than the communists. And that's what we were fighting against.
Well, let me speak to that. There is no connection between Blavatsky and Hitler. Hitler could have studied anything, as we talked about before. He could have studied Moses, he could have studied Krishna.
But he did study Blavatsky.
Of course he did, and he twisted it. Now, as we said, Hitler was a fairly advanced initiate who deliberately turned to the dark side. It just goes to show you that energy can still go bad at the second initiation. Because when we talk about second-degree initiates, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, John F. Kennedy, Hitler could have been a Mahatma Gandhi if he had turned towards the light. He deliberately twisted that. And look how he ended up, and look how much destruction he caused.
Let me ask you this. I mean, if Hitler was an initiate and he was a follower of the occult, as was much of the Nazi movement, and you say they turned to the dark side.
Yes.
And yet they were part of that movement. They were not Christian, they were not Jewish in the sense of believing in the Torah. In fact, they were at war with that. They wanted to overthrow that.
But they were not.
But in a sense,
But they had nothing to do with the Ageless Wisdom teaching.
Yeah, but doesn't that bring up a question about maybe that the age of wisdom teaching, as you call it,
Ageless Wisdom teaching.
Ageless wisdom teaching. Thank you. Doesn't that maybe, in the same way that might bring up questions about that in itself having an element that would allow for a Hitler movement? In the way that, frankly, and I don't want to go in too much into this one, but Islam as a religion or as a political idea, it gives birth to people blowing up airports in Istanbul and end up, flying airplanes into buildings to kill as many people as possible. Now, I'm not saying that the vast majority of Muslims are involved with that any more than the vast majority of Share International are involved with Hitlerism. However, these particular bodies of belief gave birth to these movements. Isn't there some accountability there?
Well, let me clarify that. The Ageless Wisdom teaching, Blavatsky's books, and Helena Roderick that came after that, and Alice Bailey, had nothing to do with Hitler and his idea of...
I disagree. But
we'll have to agree to disagree.
Okay.
And my knowledge of this is something that is based on fact. I have studied this for more than 50 years, and I can tell you unequivocally there is no connection. And any man can twist any philosophy and turn it upside down and make it evil. Hitler and his minions did not come out of the Ageless Wisdom teaching movement in any way whatsoever. Some of the best minds in mankind's history have ascribed to this, sometimes unknowingly, unconsciously. And for someone like Hitler to twist things and turn them inside out, or the totalitarian version of communism that you saw in Russia, which wasn't true communism, none of that has...
Well, first of all, there can be no such thing as true communism. That would be so evil that humans would become like lobotomized robots. But look, again, I would point out that, first of all, it was Blavatsky that developed the whole idea of Arianism. And it was Blavatsky who developed...
Let me clarify that.
Okay.
Let me clarify that, because you brought that up before. The swastika came from Hindu, the Hindu religion, and the Nazis flipped it. Blavatsky had nothing to do with that.
Well, she had already been dead before Hitler was...
That's right, of course.
I agree with that. I mean, literally she had nothing to do with it. But the philosophy there that... you say that he twisted it, and also
Exactly.
you're saying people like Gandhi, you're taking credit for them when they may not necessarily have been involved in this particular.
Oh, we're not taking credit for them. We're simply pointing out that that was their point of evolution, according to the Masters of Wisdom.
According to them.
Yeah.
But the point is that this whole occultic idea, you could say, for example, that the ISIS and Al Qaeda, that they're twisting Islam. That's a conventional
course,
view.
yeah.
I'm not so sure that's right. I think we need to take responsibility and take a look at what is it about Islam that would give birth to those movements. What is it about? You don't see. You know what I mean? Is this a departure from Islam, or is it an actual carrying out of a true believing Muslim? So the question before us, and you say no, I don't know, is whether or not the Nazi movement, which was very much New Age in every sense, they were into organics, they were into all of the things that we conventionally view as New Age today. Whether or not they were an aberration, or whether or not they were actually living this idea to the letter.
Yeah, well, we would say, of course, as I've said before, this had nothing to do with Blavatsky, who was a highly evolved and very righteous and astute and wise individual who was overshadowed by one of the masters when she wrote her books. And anything that you saw come out of these negative movements like Nazism had nothing whatsoever to do with what we have studied or what we're studying now or what Share International and the Masters of Wisdom are presenting to the world.
Okay.
In fact, we're the polar opposite of that. we're the contradiction to that.
I'm sure you are well-meaning in that sense, consciously. I just wonder whether or not the belief system, if you take a look at its principles, doesn't give birth to that. And I'm not saying you're Nazis. I'm not.
No.
Believe me.
Oh no, and we're not taking it that way.
Yeah, that's not my point. Bringing things. Yeah.
No, well, the reason why we're here is to make a connection with our soul.
Okay.
And, religions are one way to bring people to that. But we live multiple lifetimes. One of the main advantages of meditation is to make that connection with our soul, with what's called through the Antakarana, the bridge of light. And
again, the thing I observe here with the Share International idea and Metreya and all is that there are no values connected to it. It's like, sure, superconsciousness, got it, the Aryan, as described by Blavatsky, would live to be 200 years old.
Oh, that's right. We have to talk about that.
Blonde hair, blue-eyed.
We have to talk about that.
And would have cosmic consciousness, right?
No, it's got nothing to do with blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yes,
yes, it did.
And
ISIS Unveiled. It's very specific.
Let me clarify that. That is a complete misunderstanding. The Aryan race idea that Hitler came up with had nothing to do with what Blavatsky talked about. And this is a much bigger subject, but to do it as briefly as possible,
okay.
There have been many ages of man, and each had a separate name. There are different names for all the different ages, which I can't mention off the tip of my tongue. And one of those ages, one of the latest ones, was called Aryan by the masters, had nothing whatsoever to do with Hitler's twisted
race.
notion. With race.
I think it did.
It was
we
about.
have to disagree, but if
Yes.
if you look at
you've misinterpreted it. It was about the whole human race, not a particular, not a particular race as in color. When they said Aryan race, they meant the entire human species. That's what the masters talk about, not a particular race.
No,
because
it's an evolutionary idea in that there was some.
And evolution feeds into it too.
That's right,
Yeah.
but there were therefore certain people that were more evolved, quote unquote, than others. And Darwin's theory basically is a theory of breeding, that people are evolving because of superior breeding. That's what his thing is, and she completely embraced that. And also, if you take a look at Besant and Bailey, also, you have this idea of these supermen, the Übermensch, that were more evolved through breeding, through superior breeding. That's what the whole theory of evolution is. It's a theory
You're talking
of
about
breeding.
the masters. Well, let me clarify that. We're not talking about genetic breeding. You're talking about on the dense physical plane. We're talking about reincarnation.
Yeah, but she also embraced that fully and quite articulately.
Yes, reincarnation will be eventually scientifically proven as a fact. We're positing it as a fact now. And what happens is that over thousands and thousands of lifetimes, and you've probably, Chuck, had close to 100,000 lifetimes already, you're evolving and you're getting higher and higher with each lifetime, more enlightened. That's what they were talking about. And because this is a fact, everybody has been everyone. So when you talk about, for instance, Caucasians, white people who are racist against people of color, they're setting themselves up for a fine pelting somewhere down the line, because they will be all of the other races in subsequent
I agree with that, but my point
incarnations.
is that this idea of the Aryan race was
Well,
a superior race.
that was just a rev. That's a rev
That was the
of
human
body.
race, not the
revision
whites,
of body.
not the blacks,
Look, we're going to
not
have
the
to disagree
Asians.
because I could
Yes, we will have to
I could-
disagree.
we could. I mean, I could bring in the documents showing that that's
Our-
a basis.
our
of the
next-
system.
And I would point out that you've misinterpreted those very
Okay.
documents.
All right.
Our next rev of body will be more telepathic. You know, the next rev of human body that comes out. I mean, there's a
more
plan
evolved
there.
human being. Now,
Yeah.
again, I mean, the problem I have here with this thing, and I caution, in a way, my listeners here, is that there is no value system to accompany this particular belief. It's all just evolving into superior levels of consciousness to coincide with Darwin's biological evolution, which is that we're all, evolving to a superior species.
As I,
We all
as-
have
And that is the value we're talking about.
Well-
There's no sense of right and wrong.
well, do you,
There's no sense
I can
of
address that if you'll let
what
me.
is appropriate and inappropriate behavior for individuals, for societies, for nations.
Well, Chuck, let me address that then.
Yeah.
That is patently untrue. There is no truth to that in the Ages of Wisdom teaching whatsoever. As I have said, it embraces all the religions of the world, all the philosophies, and all the moral code that has already been set down. This is not some moralist belief system, and it's also not a belief system. This is more a sense of knowing. And part of the dividing line, the reason we're having a conflict in that sense here is because you're thinking more Piscean and I'm thinking more Aquarian. What do I mean by that? Each of these astrological signs has a two-word moniker. For Pisces, it was I believe. For Aquarius, it's I know. Now, we're talking more astronomical than, or
Astrological.
yes, thank you. Because what I'm saying is that for 2,000 years, the planet was oriented towards the constellation of Pisces, and those energies were incoming, which included establishing a sense of idealism and individualism. And we perfected that in those 2,000 years, because before then there was no idealism, at least among
I don't
most of
think it's
humanity.
been perfected. It's an ongoing
Of
process
course.
of waking up to your individual identity.
Relatively perfected
Yes.
versus 2,000
and
years
in the-
ago.
Well, sure.
And in the Aquarian age, we're developing more of the group mentality, and which includes the telepathy, so that people can communicate more. You and I can communicate more with thought to thought and less word to word, so there's less misunderstanding. And the idea that it empowers everyone, and everyone gets their basic needs met. So there's no amoral sense to this at all. On the contrary, it's even more principled than what came before.
Well, first of all, by putting all religions in one basket, that's basically negating all of them because they're very different.
Oh, well,
But-
we allow for that. You will keep your own religion. Each religion, see, this is the contradiction. This is the paradox, and humans hate paradox because it hurts the brain. It's too much to think about. You maintain your individualism within the group. You maintain each of the world's religions. They stay as they are within a greater compassion and understanding amongst each of them.
You know, and I think religions evolve as well. I mean, we're seeing the Pope right now, and he's said tremendous things that's, tremendously shifting,
True.
the Catholic Church.
Well, the question is he going away from the teachings, or is he going toward it? I think he's getting away from it. But
Or is it evolving? Is the teaching evolving? Is the church evolving?
Or are they watering down the teachings? I
Or-
think they are. But let me just say
Or the
also,
church become corrupt and needs to be reformed? I see him as a
either that or
reformer.
maybe it's making the church like everything else. They might as well turn it into a social club. But the point is that, look, Judaism teaches me, God says in the book of Exodus, what you're talking about here, astrology, stargazing is what it's referred to in the Torah, necromancy, astrology. God, at Sinai, God says, these things are true. He acknowledges that they are true, but he says, don't go there. He says, it's true, but don't concern yourself with it.
Right.
Don't go there. And as a Jew, I have to go with that. I have to say that the Lord God, King of the universe, blessed be he, was saying something there that I have to pay attention to. That as a human being, I am probably much more well guided by looking at the Torah and seeing the different separations of behavior and separations of what is right and wrong, what is sacred and profane, as a way of molding my own life. Not stargazing and not looking at things because they don't have a moral content. It's more of a realm that is not really necessarily beneficial to go to. Not that it doesn't exist.
Well, we see it as both beneficial and moral. And see, I was raised Catholic, and I have matured and evolved beyond that to be able to embrace other thought systems, other ideologies, other philosophies, and I'm no longer limited by the Catholic teaching that taught me the same thing, that astrology was irrelevant. I know now, after studying it for 35 years, that it actually works. I'm past the belief stage as far as astrology goes. I'm into the knowing stage. I've watched the cause and effect for more than 3.5 decades, and I know it works. And I know that this is all integrated. It's not separated. It's not divided into little camps. All of these different philosophies and bodies, they're all interacting like the human body, mental, physical, emotional, and cosmic, spiritual. They all work together as one. And that's the whole message of the Aquarian age, oneness. The age of Pisces was about the heart and mind going in opposite directions. And it was more, how do you say it? To compartmentalize things. Now we're realizing how all those things be separated, where they connect. It's like we're looking at the same thing, but from different angles. Like the Tower of Babel is gone now. Now we all understand one another, or at least we're getting there.
Yet at the same time, don't you think there's a value? Because one of the features of the Tower of Babel was the establishment of separate sovereign nations, each with its own language, its own culture. Isn't that a value?
That is a value. However, these values progress. That was probably what we would call the age of Aries. And then there was the age of Pisces. Now we're in the age of Aquarius. Mankind
Speaking
is
of ages,
stagnant.
we're reaching the age of ending the program.
Oh, yeah.
So let people know where they can reach you and find out more information. I want to give you that opportunity.
Well, they can find a lot of information up on the website. The website is www.share-international.org. There is a number of Ben Krem's books up there for free for download. One of them is Transmission Meditation, which we subscribe to. There's
The Awakening of Humanity?
there's a couple of books about Metreya that are available for download as well. Another website that we talk about is transmissionmeditation.org.
Okay.
The transmission meditation was given to us as a new form of meditation. It is a group meditation. More energies can go through a group than
Okay.
through
A
individuals.
world service.
And it's a world service.
All right. Oh, and hold up your magazine.
And there's the
Share
magazine, Share
International.
International
There you go.
Magazine, which you can also find online at the website, though it'd be a truncated version.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you want to get also information, Lucis Trust.
Yes, you can read all of Alice Bailey's books, which are a lot deeper and tougher to read than Ben's.